Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Well, discount airline Lynx Air will grind its operations to a halt, and that's leaving passengers scrambling and also wondering, what are the options for traveling cheaply in Canada? How much has it cost you to go home or visit family and friends? After 12:30, the cost of pet care sure ruffles pet parents' feathers. What's been the impact on you and the pet in your household? We'll talk about affordable pet care options. I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thanks for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming as well on CBC News app and cbc.ca/BC, also on YouTube at CBC Vancouver. Well, yes, travelers with discount airline Lynx Air are scrambling today. The Calgary-based company announced it will shut down operations as of Monday at 12:01 a.m. In a news release, Lynx Air blamed rising operation costs, high fuel prices, exchange rates, increasing airport charges, and a difficult economic and regulatory environment. Travelers booked on a canceled flight are being told to contact their credit card company for a refund. We're asking you, are you affected by the closure of Lynx Air? Do you have a flight scheduled for the coming days? And how much does it cost you to travel within Canada? Perhaps visiting family, going back home to Ontario, back east. What are the affordable options left? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Well, Lynx Air is just the latest airline to close down. CBC business reporter Jeannie Lee explains why it has been so challenging for Lynx and other upstart discount airlines.
It's incredible. I've been keeping a running tally of all of the defunct airlines out there. And just the other year, 3 years ago, I was talking about WOW Airline. Remember that one? Then you had Jetsco, CanJet, Canada 3000, Sky Service, and on it goes. And it's because of various factors. It is expensive to run an airline. There isn't a whole lot of capital available to that extent when, especially for an upstart, which isn't proven yet and really needs a lot of money. And the thing is, there is a lot of demand because for an ultra low-cost carrier, think of the market that doesn't have the money to actually pay full fares or fuller fares. And you would think that there would be demand, but there are a lot of other charges that come into play. Security charges, for example, and others, airport fees, that really add to that cost of the ticket. And so there isn't the demand then that you would expect because it no longer becomes a low cost option. And that's why we have these upstarts which quickly become failures.
That's a CBC's Jeannie Lee reporting. This morning, a federal transport minister, Pablo Rodriguez, issued this statement on X. I'm thinking of Canadian travelers affected by this news, their families, and the communities across Canada who will feel the impact of this. My office has been in touch with Lynx. We will continue to communicate with all parties, and we've convened calls with airlines to see how they can help to ensure that passengers are put first. That from Transport Minister Pablo Rodriguez. Joining me for more on this now is Mackenzie McMillan, a travel consultant with the Travel Group. Hi, Mackenzie. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, tell me more about that. You know, Jeannie Lee just went through all these other airlines. Canada 3000, that takes me back.
Yeah.
Tell us more about Lynx Airlines. What's their history?
Well, they don't have much of one. They've only been around for about 2 years. It's always been an uphill battle for low-cost airlines and ultra-low-cost airlines in the Canadian market. We don't have the numbers of travelers that we have in, say, the United States, where Southwest Airlines, Spirit Airlines, Allegiant, they've all proven a successful business model. The average profit per seat on any airline, even big airlines like Air Canada, it's very small. So they really need the volume of passengers to be able to sustain it. And so when you have an airline like Southwest Airlines in the States, where they have 200 to 300 aircraft constantly moving, and also between much smaller distances. So, flying from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. In Canada, unfortunately, our urban centers are generally very far apart from each other. So the cost to operate these aircraft, flying from, Hamilton, Ontario to Calgary, it's a lot higher, and we just don't have the number of people needed to sustain, or number of travelers to sustain that kind of operation.
And has it been harder for something like Lynx due to the pandemic over more recent years?
Yeah, I mean, Lynx actually started after we kind of were winding down from the pandemic. They started in 2022. And I think, we had a real rush to get ultra low cost airlines into Canada in the early 2000s, and there was not a market for it at all. So we saw airlines like Zip come up and go down as quickly as you take off and land on a flight. And I think now we're in a climate where you can sustain an ultra low cost. The problem is we now have 5. Right. And so the market's become so saturated so quickly. And a lot of these airlines are vying to compete with Air Canada and WestJet. But Air Canada and WestJet have 200 aircraft or 150 aircraft. Lynx has 9. And half of them are leased. Wow. So it's a lot of expenses, and they just don't have the ability to produce the revenue they need to keep themselves afloat.
Wow. And what have you been hearing today then?
Well, I think it's mostly shock. I think a lot of people are shocked simply because of how quickly this all happened. We had heard rumblings in the industry that maybe they were trying to merge with another airline, and that might be why it was such a sudden announcement last night that, these merger talks have been happening for a while. They obviously fell through, and now they just simply can't operate after Sunday. So it's a bit of a surprise. The biggest problem we're going to have is people that are trapped in destination. So, we think about the flights that we have booked 2-3 weeks down the road. Oh no, my trip is in trouble. People that are in, they fly Toronto to Cancun. So people that are in Mexico right now and now don't have a flight home, that's where we really need to be concerned.
Oh my goodness, you've been getting those calls then?
Yeah, so we've heard a little bit about that. WestJet has decided to step up to the plate, and they are offering rescue flights or options for people that are in destination. There's been a bit of misinformation I've seen online today about what their policy is. But for people that are stuck in destination, as long as you're flying home by February 29th, they do have the option for you to purchase tickets at a capped price of $250 if you're in a sun destination or in the United States. And it has to be on a route that Lynx was flying and is no longer operating, and you have to have a Lynx ticket. And then if you're somewhere in Canada and trying to get home, they've capped it at $500. Okay. But those are only for travel up to February 29th.
Okay, that's really good to know. Good information to have. My guest, Mackenzie McMillan, travel consultant with the Travel Group. And we're asking you, are you affected by the closure of Lynx Air, as we heard just announced, and it's happening pretty quickly. Come Monday, 12:01 a.m., it will cease operations. So how much does it cost you to travel within Canada especially? And what are the affordable options left? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, bctoday@cbc.ca is where you can reach us. You can text us as well, and that's 236-330-2623. T is joining us from Ladysmith. Hi, T.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And what are your thoughts on the closure of Lynx Air?
Sadly, it was expected because ULCs in Canada doesn't operate the right way. That's a different thing, but we have a monopoly in Canada which is supported by the government. There are 2 types of air support in the world today. It's low cost and full fare, full service airline. Air Canada claims they are full service airline. Full service airline, you get a seat, you get food, you get luggage, and so on included in the ticket. Prices in Canada has gone up with 20% each month till now, where they have stagnated because of less travelers going to destinations.
Okay, so how much harder has that made it for something like Lynx?
They are just phased out of the market because they have the same cost and fewer airports they can fly into. Right. Air Canada has priority on airports. WestJet has second priority, and then the low cost come on a third priority. It shows that Canada is not interested in competition. We need to have monopoly on everything so we can get more money. I fly a lot. I used to work in airlines, and I know how it works. And since 2018, they haven't changed the menu in the business class. It's the same omelette you get, the same crappy food you get.
Is it? I wouldn't know.
And they still call themselves a full-service airline, which is, it's a joke. The staff.
And so for yourself, does that mean one less option for an affordable flight for you then? So, as someone who flies a lot?
That's correct. Yeah. It's gone. But I just have to say the staff on board, the staff on the ground, the staff on the phone is incredible. They are doing a fantastic job. The management is the one who doesn't listen to their clients and the staff.
Okay.
So it's sad. It's really sad to see that we are losing another affordable option for Canadians.
Yeah. T, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
And the guy before me said that it was too many low cost. It's not too many.
For 5.
It's not too many. It's 40 million Canadians, and they could have traveled a lot with a cheaper fare. Look at Ryanair, how they are doing. They are doing incredible.
All right. T, thank you so much. Yeah, let's talk more about that lack of competition. You do have more now of the low-cost airlines, but how does that lack of competition affect them?
I mean, yeah, in Canada, it's just always going to be tough. And when I say there's not enough people, yes, we do have 40 million people in Canada, a majority of which are active travelers. Canada has an extremely high rate of citizens that travel. But the United States has 300 million people. And where Ryanair is concerned, Ryanair is not it started out as an Irish airline. It's Europe's airline. So it serves all of Europe. And EasyJet's another example, but Ryanair is the largest low-cost carrier in the world.
Wow.
Excuse me. And they've slowly built and expanded. Whereas I think that the low-cost carriers that we have in Canada that are trying so quickly to get those really busy markets, Calgary to Las Vegas, Toronto to Florida, they're expanding so quickly that they're just, and they're trying to take a piece of the pie from Air Canada. And I understand, what he said about the, not being full service on Air Canada because they charge for bags, charge for seats. Unfortunately, that's the climate we're in now globally. There are airlines that we would consider to be top tier legacy carriers that are charging for seat assignment when you have a business class ticket.
Wow.
So we've been on a race to the bottom with airlines probably since deregulation in the 1980s. And so what's happened now is that we always want those fares to be lower. But as I mentioned, the cost per seat or the profit per seat is already quite low. So they have to charge these ancillary fees.
Adding and adding. I'm not surprised anymore when I see, that fee for the baggage, fee for choosing a seat. It's no longer a surprise.
It's not, no. But I mean, you just kind of have to weigh it in. And in some ways, I like the idea that, like, if you're not traveling with a check bag, why should that be built into your airfare? So, when you look at it from that perspective, but obviously, anytime you have an extra fee once you paid $500 or $600 for a flight, it's annoying.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. Mackenzie McMillan is with me, travel consultant with the Travel Group. It's now 12:19, 1:19 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today. And yes, as Lynx Air cites several headwinds as reasons for ceasing operations, including higher operating and fuel costs, airport charges, and a difficult economic environment. Deborah Yedlin is president and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. Here she is speaking on the situation.
There's a joke in the airline business is, do you want to make a small fortune, you start with a big one. It's notoriously difficult, and we know that the airline world has been very challenged by post-pandemic shortage when it comes to labor, aircraft, jet fuel prices, and there's been a confluence of events that's really put a lot of downward pressure on the airline business as a whole. And so when you're a discount player and your margins are even tighter, you're going to feel the economic headwinds that much more acutely than somebody else who has a bigger operation and is better equipped to deal with the changes in the market. Lynx served a very specific niche market. They knew that they wanted to serve the traveler who wasn't expecting any frills, that wanted to get from A to B, that didn't want to pay a lot of money, and of course, that's where they played. The reality too is that our airport fees are high, and so that wouldn't have helped them at all in that regard, in terms of what they would have to pay versus what they could charge as a discount airline. So that's a different conversation, but I think the airport fees as they're structured makes it hard for discount airlines to be successful in Canada long term.
Deborah Yedlin is president and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. We're asking you this half hour on BC Today, are you affected by the closure of Lynx Air? The Calgary-based discount airline just announced that it is shutting down operations as of Monday, 12:01 a.m. And so thousands of passengers are scrambling right now. We're asking you if you're affected and how much does it cost you to travel within Canada? What are the affordable options left for you? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, bctoday@cbc.ca. By text, 236-330-2623. And James is calling us now with another perspective on this. Hi, James.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And what are your thoughts on the closure of Lynx Air?
Well, I don't have a particular thought on the closure of Lynx Air, but my comment is stay home. Work on your carbon footprint.
Okay, because of the emissions from flying.
And notice that in Europe, they don't want tourists. They're charging taxes in various hotspots for tourism.
You're thinking about Venice, I think, yeah.
And Amsterdam, apparently.
And what about, we asked specifically about within Canada because, as you know, over the holidays, people go home to visit their loved ones. What are the options left, do you think?
Well, that is a sad thing, isn't it, that we're so disparate in our living. But I'm sorry, the sooner we get rid of multiple airplanes, the better.
Okay, yeah, it is. It does account.
Well, I've got a suggestion. Take the money for the airfare, plant a tree.
Okay.
I know.
James, thank you so much for that point. That is something, people will bring up as well. And I don't know from your perspective what you're hearing from people saying this is something I struggle with, emissions caused by airplanes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we happen to live in one of the largest countries in the world for area, and air travel just is the way we travel. We talk a lot about building a high-speed rail infrastructure across the country. It's not really feasible in a country of this size. In Europe, a lot of countries now are changing the way that they travel. So they're reducing small flights, so flights between Paris and Lyon, for example, and they want people to be taking the train. That's fantastic, and it's a great way to help reduce our global carbon footprint when we travel. It's not feasible, unfortunately. Maybe if you live in Toronto and you just need to get to Montreal, sure.
Right.
But when we're all the way out here in Vancouver, air travel just unfortunately is the way we're going to have to travel. So, a lot of airlines are doing a lot to offset their carbon footprints or bring in more environmentally sound aircraft. Porter Airlines is a great example. They've brought in new aircraft to fly their new long-haul routes that are much better on the environment than the old traditional aircraft. So step by step.
Yeah, I remember. Well, actually, just this past December, we spoke with NDP Skeena Bulkley Valley MP Taylor Backrack because he was making the point about passenger train service. So he actually took a 4,500 kilometer train ride from Ontario to the North Coast here, and he was just making the point that this is something he's trying to build support for, is to amend the Canada Transportation Act so that it becomes easier for people to travel by rail. So there is still that call, but whether it is feasible for more of a mass use is a question there. Rich also asked, so much discussion about another airline closure, but no mention at all about the consequences of recreational travel by airline or otherwise. Thanks for finally taking that one call, suggesting that people even come close to considering the real environmental cost of such travel. Rich, thank you very much for that. And that is an important part of the conversation as well, especially when we talk about airline travel as well. So 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. I often do wonder, and you've just touched on this, it's because of the sheer distance between the major urban areas in Canada, because, you often just get sticker shock at how much more expensive it is to fly to Ontario than, say, to just down to LA or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of it is competition. I'm just looking at this for a client the other day, and flying from Vancouver to Windsor is very expensive.
Oh, my goodness.
But flying from Vancouver to Detroit is half the price.
Oh, really?
Half the
and
price,
that's Detroit.
And that's Detroit, Michigan, which is right across the water. So it does depend on, the U.S., they've got much more competitive rates for airline travel, and that forces the Canadian carriers to drop their prices as well when you're visiting U.S. destinations. But within Canada, it's tough. Canada does have some of the highest fees implemented on the airlines at airports. Fuel costs are much higher here than they are in other markets like the United States. So the airlines, even Air Canada and WestJet, they have a lot working against them when it comes to how they properly price airfares. And unfortunately, we have two airlines that are competing against each other, maybe three if you include Porter as they expand into the market. And so it's just tough to get those prices to come down. Now, I would say Porter, and I include them because they're not, I can't really include them in the ultra low cost market. They're kind of their own special market because their prices have been a bit lower than Air Canada and WestJet in general, but they also had a great business model to start with that had been running for years in the Northeast or in Ontario.
What's different about their model?
Well, so they started out being just a regional carrier. They were based out of Toronto City Airport, flying to major business centers. So they were primarily a business travel airline. They were only flying Toronto, Montreal, Toronto, Quebec City, New York, Chicago, and so business areas out of Toronto. They've expanded now that they have jet service, but they've also provided additional amenities on their flights. So things like, food service, drink service, stuff that we remember from, 20 years ago when we flew. And so they've been able to kind of carve out their own little niche market and do it and still make a profit. Now they're expanding quite quickly, so we'll see how that goes for them, because I think the fast expansion into the US and into Mexico and sun destinations is probably what's hurting a lot of these low-cost airlines. So we'll see how they do. But, we probably have, I would say now we have three really good core airlines in Canada to choose from. And I have seen the prices drop a little bit, but these low-cost carriers are never going to be able to compete with the major airlines. They just don't have the numbers of aircraft or the routes.
Alphonse is joining us from Victoria. Hi, Alphonse.
Hello. I would suggest, why doesn't the government, like a term of confederation for British Columbia to join was that there would be a railroad on Vancouver Island, and there should be at least the highly traveled areas and also high-speed trains across the prairies. It'd be easy to build, and it's a long distance. Put the passenger trains back. Even here in Victoria, make a subway that goes under Goldstream Park, and it's level tunnel drilling for about 2 miles, and they could sell the land on top of it and make a subway that goes downtown. Our roads are so congested, it's crazy.
Yeah.
They're putting all their money into airplanes and building houses with no infrastructure. Build stuff instead of spending money on airplanes.
Okay. Alphonse, thank you very much. We may need some of that innovative thinking as we deal with climate change and as you were talking about, congestion on the island for sure, along the island highway, if you think about it too. Mackenzie, is there a role for the federal government on this? We heard the statement from the transport minister. They have stepped in at times when it comes to airlines, with Air Canada, for example. Is there a role for
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, right? I mean, we want the government to help out, but we also don't seem to ever want the government to bail out airlines or own an airline. A lot of countries, the main airline, we call them flag carriers, they're owned by their federal governments and they're funded by them. Air Canada used to be that way, but they're not anymore. My understanding is that the government has some interest in it, but it is still a separately owned company. I don't know if that's the route we want to go down, with the government getting back into trying to make airlines profitable, because as I said before, it's a tough market in Canada. So in the U.S. model, there is no flag carrier. You've got four major airlines that all compete against each other. They're all privately owned or publicly owned, rather, but not the government pays no part in it. So I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see the federal government make it easier for airlines to operate in the country. So that means things like airport fees, landing taxes, air right fees, like all of those sort of fees that the government implements. That's where the break really needs to happen. I don't think they need money being pumped into the airlines. They need expenses reduced.
Really good to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. Mackenzie McMillan, travel consultant with the Travel Group. It's 12:31 now, 1:31 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us on Radio 1, CBC Television, live streaming as well. You can watch us on our website, cbc.ca/BC, or on YouTube at CBC Vancouver. And coming up, our pets column is back, and we'll talk about dealing with the cost of things like taking your pet to the veterinarian. What are the affordable options? What have you been struggling with when it comes to being able to pay for the health care of your pet? We'll talk about that coming up after the CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The federal NDP says it has reached a deal with the governing Liberals to introduce the first piece of a national pharmacare program that includes coverage for birth control and diabetes medication. An NDP spokesperson confirms the deal but says some final details may still be worked out over the weekend. A man has been arrested in Richmond after allegedly trying to lure a child after communicating with them online. A mother says the man contacted her child through Snapchat and arranged to meet at a Richmond park Wednesday night. RCMP believe the man has been in contact with other young people. He has been released from custody with several conditions. And police here in BC have announced 8 arrests in what officials call a dismantling of a significant and sophisticated drug manufacturing and distribution ring. The RCMP say the operation led to the seizure of 356,000 counterfeit pills, 168 kilograms of chemicals used for production, 4 illegal firearms, and more than 1,500 rounds of ammunition. And now the forecast on the North Coast, cloudy this afternoon with a high of 5, highs reaching 7 with showers or flurries in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a chance of flurries or showers with a high of 2, highs up to 8 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, some sun and cloud with a high of 10. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, some sunshine this afternoon with highs around 11. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Rob.
You are welcome, Michelle.
Now, you're someone who's just been back from a trip yourself.
That is true.
I love this story. You lost your cell phone somewhere along the way.
I did, about 4 days into the trip.
Just 4
yeah, so
days.
about 4 weeks now without a phone.
Oh,
yeah.
4 weeks now without a phone.
Yes.
Not in a rush to get
Crazy.
another one, eh?
Well, I'm getting it next week. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a process, but yeah, I've enjoyed it. You know, it forces you not to be on the phone. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, how did it impact your vacation? Were you able to actually take one?
Yeah, there were some hassles at the beginning because all of my hotels and everything were booked through my phone. So my son helped me work that out, and I ended up reading like 6 books. Oh. So it was great. Yeah, freed up a lot of scrolling time.
Yeah, exactly. You never know just how much time you actually spend on your phone. I left my phone here the other night, actually, so I went home without it.
You panicked?
Yes, exactly. Will I live to tell the tale?
Yeah.
But in fact, I really enjoyed the evening. So
it is crazy how they've become such a huge part of our lives.
Yeah, that's true. So enjoy the time when you are without your phone.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe next time I thought maybe I'll just on purpose accidentally leave my phone somewhere too.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Rob, thanks so much.
Sure.
Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. It's Friday and time now for our regular pet segment. This is where we talk about the joys, the challenges of having our pets in our life. Well, we've heard from a lot of you about one challenge, and that is in particular the cost of pet care. And a lot of listeners wanted to know about more affordable options for pet care. And so you can call us now with your questions and your tips. Let us know, are you and your pets being impacted by rising costs? What are your solutions for keeping your pet healthy in an affordable way? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. By email, bctoday@cbc.ca, and by text at 236-330-2623. I'm joined now in studio by Kathy Powelson, Executive Director of Pause for Hope, BC. Hi, Kathy. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for joining us.
Thank
This is
you.
something that comes up a lot, doesn't it?
It's sort of why our organization exists, actually. It's to support people and their pets.
Okay, because your mandate is to keep people and their pets together.
Yes.
And how much of a challenge is cost in that?
Yeah, well, it is the number one issue that impacts our companion animals is access to veterinary care. More animals suffer as a result of inadequate access to veterinary care than they do from intentional acts of cruelty or neglect. And so our organization, we have a few programs that are intended specifically to support lower income families with veterinary care. We also have a temporary foster care program, which helps people that are experiencing a temporary crisis, well, hopefully it's temporary, and may need a temporary place for their pets to be while they get back on their feet. So people are, in addition to rising costs, people are being really impacted by the housing crisis, by the drug crisis, and by domestic violence. And those are sort of the three avenues of when people are reaching out to us for temporary care of their pets is because of one or sometimes all three of those issues.
And what about the cost of veterinarians? How are you able to help with that?
Yeah, so we have a couple funding programs to assist with veterinary care. And we work with partner veterinarians across the province to provide subsidized veterinary care for low-income families. What is unique about our funding program is it is intended to support families for the length of their pets, for the life of their pets, for as long as they continue to qualify. And so when we're talking about supporting families and their pets beyond just crisis, and one of the things is if we can help families access ongoing veterinary care, it will or it should reduce the chances of more serious health issues down the line because the animals are getting that. You know, we encourage people to do annual checkups with their vet.
That primary care.
That primary care can really reduce or eliminate more expensive care in the future.
Sure. Yeah, you know, we've heard that from when we've had vets on the program as well. Make sure you do the ongoing preventative care. Let's put out the phone numbers as we ask you, how have rising costs affected you and your pet? And let us know if you have found affordable ways to take care of your pet. Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Text us at 236-330-2623. You can email to bctoday@cbc.ca. And Lenora wrote us, she writes, "My dogs have always been the light of my life. No effort or expense spared. However, with the increases in pet healthcare and pet insurance, I'm not sure I will be able to afford another dog as I age, and in future years will need to spend more on healthcare, house repairs, etc. I'm very interested to hear what your pet guest will have to say about that." Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, you know, as people retire, how much more valuable it might be to have a pet, but your costs as well, you're on more of a fixed income. How much of a challenge is that?
Yeah, and many of our clients enrolled in the program are on a fixed income. They are elderly. Often it's them and their cat or them and their dog, and that bond is so important.
Absolutely.
And I, you know, the email really reflects how important pets are to people, and they really are members of the family. Our relationships, our understanding of behavior has really changed the nature of pets in our family, say from like 30 or 40 years ago. Some people opt not to have children and have pets instead.
They're a member of your family.
And yes, absolutely, they're a member of your family. And so when we talk about building healthy communities, we have to include pets in that social safety net because they are members of family. And we see on a daily the sacrifices that people are making to either ensure they can keep their pets with them. So that may be sleeping in their car because they've lost their pet-friendly housing. It may be, often we'll get calls from people who've just spent their rent money on a vet emergency and are just trying now to, get some funding back to support themselves. So it is really, really hard. We've seen a significant increase in requests for funding support and as well as foster care. And one of the things that I would recommend for people, if thinking ahead, and depending again on what your financial situation is, because not everyone can afford pet insurance, and pet insurance isn't the answer for everything, but it is one way to mitigate some more potentially expensive care that might come up in the future as your pets get older. The unfortunate thing is as your pets get older, the premiums go up as well. So it's not always the best solution for everybody, but it is a solution. There is also a couple financing companies, again, depending on what your situation is. If you're faced with an emergency bill, there is financing, and those are probably more appropriate for middle to higher income families or individuals rather than low income families, because one of the things that we don't want to do is create a worse financial situation for someone that's reaching out to us for help by suggesting they try to get some credit or financing support to care for. So we try to help. We have our Better Together program, which provides ongoing funding support for families that are enrolled. We do also have a pot that's specifically for one-time funding only for emergency vet care. We try to do free clinics in the community in partnership with social service organizations, where we'll go in to a supportive housing and we'll provide vaccinations and parasite control for the resident pets in there. We have actually a few planned this year.
Okay, that's really interesting, and I'm sure people would like to avail of that. If you have any questions of what are affordable options for pet health care for you, how you can deal with rising costs of pet health care and perhaps insurance as well, we'd love to hear from you. What is it like for you if you taking care of a pet in your life, in your family, your household? What are the costs that you face? Have they been going up as well? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And our email, once again, is bctoday@cbc.ca. And we're talking about the cost of living generally, right? And pets falling into that. The budget, the provincial budget was handed down yesterday. What did you see or what did you not see in there that would help people and their pets?
There's never been anything for people and pets in any provincial budget. So no. Unfortunately, spending in animal welfare is not a provincial priority. And so, charities such as Pause for Hope really are reliant on donations in order to support people, which is really unfortunate, particularly now, because what we're experiencing is the cost of living is impacting everything, and so that's impacting donations. But the catch-22 is we have such a significant increase in requests for help because everything is just so expensive, and so some costs which people could afford in the past can no longer afford. So that annual checkup, it may be, say, $300, that may be, but now for some families and some, that's just not. It's too much for them to be able to do. And what we're seeing in the shelters in our rescue system is they're full
Yeah.
because people are unable to care for their pets. And so what we're trying to do is if there's a loved animal, let's keep it out of the shelter. It should not be in a shelter. Shelters should not be for loved pets. And so what can we do to help support that family in keeping their pet together?
Yeah, and there have been changes as well for families when it comes to pets in family law, for example. What impact is that going to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of the first signal we've seen that we from a legal perspective that shift the way that we talk about pets. That's why we like to say guardian as opposed to ownership, or pet families, because they really are members of the family. And so that legislation that now is putting the interests of the pet in the decision in divorce custody decision making is a significant step. But there's still a lot more we need to do at a government perspective, really to acknowledge that pets are family. And so when we see funding come in through social services organizations, that it's to help the pets as well.
Let's take a call now. Again, our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Your experiences and your tips when it comes to the rising costs of having a pet in your life. Corinne is joining us now in West Kelowna. Hi, Corinne.
Hi there.
Hey, what's your experience?
So, yeah, I have a couple of tips on how to save money when it comes to feeding our pets and taking care of them. I have a 15-year-old schnoodle, and he's doing really, really well. And what I do I just completely stop buying dog food because I don't have a lot of trust in the ingredients. So I make big bowls full of quinoa, brown rice, frozen vegetables, and as far as protein, I go for the organ meats. They're really inexpensive, liver, chicken gizzards, that kind of thing, and maybe if ground beef is on sale, and I just mash it all up and put all the really good ingredients in there, and it's much cheaper than a bag of dry dog food.
There you go. And when did you make this change in your life?
About a month ago, when just the price of food and dog food, et cetera, for people, for animals, just skyrocketed, and so I made changes for him, and he's getting older, so he promised me 20 years, and so we're going to make that happen.
Corinne, I can tell you love your dog. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Corinne in West Kelowna. Yeah. What about that? Alternatives to pet food?
I mean, pet food has gone up significantly. So I think that's a really great solution. Providing that all of the nutrients that dogs require is included in those meals. I mean, the cost of a large dog kibble is, it's around $100 now. Wow. So it's a lot of money.
What suggestions would you have for people should they make that same change or consider making that same change as Corinne? Where can they go for information about making sure they got the enough nutrients and that kind of thing?
I would speak to my veterinarian first and foremost before I made any sort of changes like that with my animal, just to ensure that it's the right thing to do for my specific animal, and then ask them for resources of where to make homemade food. I wouldn't just go online and Google homemade dog food.
That doesn't work for anything.
I wouldn't use ChatGPT either for a recipe. I would speak with my veterinarian.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's probably good advice. Joe is on the line in Vancouver now. Hi, Joe.
Hi, how you doing?
I am well, thanks. So what do you want to say about the cost of caring for your pet?
Okay, so I got a rescue dog about 5 years ago. She's a real sweetheart. And within about a month and a half, she started limping on her rear hind quarter. Oh. So I took her to the vet. And they said that she had torn the ligament in her knee. And so there were two different types of surgeries. They only do the one newer surgery now, which is put a steel plate in and 4 screws, and the plate's not titanium. It was just a piece of steel plate with 4 screws that they put in her hind quarter. And I said, okay, so how much is that going to be? It cost me $6,000.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I was quite shocked. I would even expect to pay that to have my knee operated on.
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing
No, go ahead.
is luckily I had the money at the time because I was saving to buy a truck, a newer truck for myself, because the vet would not take any sort of payment plan. They wanted it all up front in full, and that was Canada West down in Vancouver that come highly recommended. But they wanted it all up front, and of course, zero guarantees on the surgery. But if I didn't have the money, they wouldn't have helped me at all.
Yeah,
which I think is sad because I remember I'm 60 now, and as a young kid growing up, if you didn't have the money, the vets would work with you on some sort of payment plan, that type of thing, and that's just not an option anymore.
That's a really good point. We don't have Canada West here to explain or respond. But how is your dog doing now?
Well, she's doing okay now, but it's always in the back of my mind, and I don't. I'm afraid to play with her like I used to play with her because she really likes chasing balls and sticks and stuff like that. And it's sad that I can understand, like, if they'd even said 3,000, I still would have thought that was high, but a little more reasonable. But when they said $6,000, honestly, my jaw hit the ground.
I'm sure it did. And here you are. This is something that you talked about as well. You having to make those difficult decisions, right? And you were saving up for a truck. Well, there goes that for now, and that's going to go to the operation.
Well, of course, I love my dog, and although I'd only had her for a month and a half, but still, obviously. And I think that veterinarian medicine has changed quite a bit over the decades when I first owned a pet. And I think their priorities are it's a business. It's not, it's really not about the animal anymore. And I don't find any of that empathy or compassion with any of the vets anymore. They introduce themselves as doctors, and it's really more of a business. And that was exorbitant. That really is. I mean, it was a very small procedure. It took maybe an hour.
It cost you a lot, though. Yeah.
They try to justify the cost of it by, well, we have a parabolic chamber here for dogs. We have this, we have that, and all the different types of services that they offer, which is.
Joe, thank you so much. I can really hear that you care so much about your dog. Let's just talk about that. The cost with Kathy Powelson, Executive Director of Paws for Hope BC. He was talking there about, is there a payment plan option? There wasn't in his case.
So just the cost of that surgery anywhere is expensive. And I think what's important to understand is veterinary hospitals are businesses. They have to be paid to operate. They have overhead. And so I don't feel like it's fair to demonize veterinarians for running a business, because it is a business. I think we're really fortunate in Canada because we don't see the true cost of our human health care. And so it is jarring when we sometimes with surgeries for our pets when we're quoted a few $1,000s. But the costs are what they are, and they have gone up for sure for a number of reasons which we don't have time to go into today. But I think, and then in terms of payment plans, well, again, I think that's an individual hospital decision. Canada West is a specialty clinic, so they're not a clinic that would have ongoing relationship with individuals and their pets. So it's like I go to my vet every year and then something comes up. I've been going there for 10 years. They may consider a payment plan because we've had that relationship. But specialty hospitals, it's a different relationship that you have. And they provide top-notch care. So, I mean, to get surgery at Canada West is, you're getting the best care possible.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, what he said, I'm a little careful with playing with my dog now just because you're so worried.
Well, and with that injury, if one goes, it's very likely the other will go.
Yeah. Joe, thank you so much for that. Luella is our last caller on this in Kitimat. Hi, Luella.
Hi, how are you?
I am fine. And how is your poodle terrier doing?
Well, she's 18. She has cancer, so she's not doing the best. I'm hoping that when her time comes, she'll just go to sleep at home. She we've always, I've had this dog, she was a 2-year-old rescue dog, but 90% of her life she has lived on people food. She doesn't get a lot of dog food. I found she's been very healthy up to this time. Even now, she's willing to go out for walks. And not for the long walks she used to, but she still likes to go for a walk. She's still eating and drinking. So I'm very fortunate to still have her.
You sure are.
Yeah. You know, pet food, if you're getting good pet food, is expensive. So if you can, I'm lucky I can afford to give her people food I can afford to eat. So I'm one of the fortunate ones. And I can afford a vet bill, and hopefully we can keep the vet bills reasonable. So far we have.
Luella, really good to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. That's Luella in Kitimat. I have about a minute left here. What advice would you have for someone who's facing a big bill or trying to find an affordable option right now?
Well, if they're a low-income earner, they can reach out to us, and if we're able to help, we will help. Speak to your vet about a possible payment plan. Some will do that, again, depending on what your situation is like, financing might be an option. But I think the best case scenario is we're all able to put a little bit of money aside every month for a pet safety net. But the reality is, particularly now, it's just not possible.
Really good to have the information, though, and the resources you've shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Good to have you. Kathy Powelson, Executive Director of Pause for Hope BC. We reached out to the Society of BC Veterinarians for a comment. They weren't able to give us a statement by airtime. That's it for our show. Thanks to everyone who called in and joined the discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.